Trust is like a mirror. Once it's broken, you can try to glue it back together, but you'll always see the cracks in the reflection. My story is about the day my mirror didn't just crack, it shattered into a million pieces. It was a crisp Saturday morning in October, the kind where the air smells like dried leaves and rain. I stood on the driveway, wrapping my cardigan tighter around myself. My husband, Mark, was loading the last of the camping gear into the truck. He looked good, too good for a man who claimed he was exhausted from work. At 40, he still had that athletic build from his college football days and that easy, charming smile that could talk his way out of a speeding ticket. "You sure you don't want to come, babe?" Mark asked, tossing a sleeping bag into the back. "My sister would love to see you. The lake is beautiful this time of year." I shook my head, forcing a smile. Someone has to get that home office finished. If I don't rip out that old drywall this weekend, I never will. Besides, you and the kids need some bonding time. "Mom, please," 6-year-old Chloe whined from the back seat. "Who's going to braid my hair?" "Daddy will figure it out," I laughed, reaching through the window to squeeze her hand. "I'll have pizza and movies waiting when you get back on Sunday night." Mark walked over and kissed my forehead. It was a quick, routine peck. "Love you too," I said automatically. This is where the story truly begins. Before we dive in, what time is it where you are? Which country are you watching from? Leave a comment and let me know. And please hit that like button and subscribe to become part of Mama Joyce's Chronicles community for more inspiring stories. I watched the truck disappear down the street, turning the corner past the oversized oak tree. As soon as they were gone, the house went completely silent. It wasn't a peaceful silence, though. It felt heavy, empty. I'm 38 years old, a freelance graphic designer, and a full-time mom. Being alone in the house was a luxury I hadn't had in months. But instead of relaxing, I felt a weird itch to get moving. I headed straight for the spare room we were converting into my office. Mark had promised to help me with the renovation for 6 months, but work emergencies always popped up. He was a regional sales manager, which meant late nights, constant travel, and a phone that never stopped buzzing. "Fine," I told myself, tying my hair up in a messy bun. "I'll do it myself." I put on some old music and grabbed the crowbar. The plan was simple. Tear down the water-damaged paneling on the back wall, check the insulation, and put up fresh drywall. I started ripping into the wood. It was tough work, but satisfying. With every piece of wood that splintered, I felt a little stress leave my body. By noon, I was covered in dust and sweating, but I had exposed most of the wall frame. I was about to take a break when I noticed something odd near the floor, right behind where Mark's heavy oak desk used to sit. The drywall there wasn't nailed in properly. It looked like it had been patched up, but neatly. Too neatly, like someone wanted to be able to remove it again. Curiosity got the better of me. I wedged the crowbar behind the seam and gave it a gentle tug. The entire square section popped off effortlessly. It wasn't insulation behind there. It was a hollowed-out space between the studs, a perfect little hiding spot. And sitting right in the middle, covered in a layer of gray dust, was a black metal lockbox. My heart did a weird flip. We had a safe in the master bedroom for our passports and birth certificates. Why would Mark hide a box inside a wall? I pulled it out. It was heavy. I sat on the floor, wiping the dust off the lid. It was locked, obviously, but I knew Mark. He used the same 3 codes for everything: his birthday, our anniversary, or his old football jersey number. I tried the birthday. Nothing. I tried our anniversary. It didn't budge. I frowned. Maybe it wasn't Mark's, but we'd been the only owners of this house for 10 years. I tried the jersey number. 880. Click. The latch popped open. I took a deep breath and lifted the lid. At first glance, it looked like a standard emergency stash. There were stacks of cash, $100 bands banded together. A quick count in my head said it was at least $20,000. My stomach tightened. We shared our finances. We argued about the budget for the renovation just last week. He told me money was tight, yet here was 20 grand sitting in a wall. But money I could explain. Maybe he was saving for a surprise, maybe a rainy day fund he forgot to mention. I dug deeper. Under the cash was a manila envelope, no writing on it. My hands were shaking a little now. The air in the room felt suddenly cold. I opened the clasp and slid the contents out onto my lap. It wasn't just documents, it was a whole life. There was a lease agreement for an apartment in the city, a luxury high-rise downtown, dated 3 years ago. The tenant's name was Mark, but the co-tenant listed was someone named Elena Russo. Who was Elena? My hands trembled as I reached for the next item in the box. It was a photograph. It showed Mark, my Mark, sitting at a fancy restaurant table. He was laughing, looking younger and more carefree than I'd seen him in years. And sitting next to him, with her hand resting possessively on his chest, was a stunning woman with dark curly hair and red lipstick. But that wasn't the worst part. I flipped the photo over. In Mark's handwriting, the same handwriting that wrote birthday cards to our kids, was a note. To my soulmate Elena, happy 2nd anniversary. I can't wait to start our real life together. The date on the back was from last month. The room started to spin. I couldn't breathe. My husband of 14 years, the father of my children, wasn't just cheating, he was celebrating an anniversary. He was living a double life. But as I looked back into the box, I saw one more thing at the very bottom, something that made the affair seem like the lesser of two evils. It was a small, translucent plastic folder. I opened it, and my entire world went black. I held the translucent folder, my fingers numb and clumsy. The air in the room felt thick, like all the oxygen had been sucked out. I opened it slowly, praying that I was wrong, that this was some kind of sick joke or a misunderstanding. But the paper inside didn't lie. It was a birth certificate. Not one, but 2. Names, Lucas James and Leo James. Date of birth, August 14th, 2 years ago. Mother, Elena Russo. Father, Mark Anthony Miller. I dropped the folder like it was burning my skin. Twins! He had twins! My mind flashed back to August 14th, 2 years ago. Mark had been away on a critical training seminar in Chicago. I remembered it clearly because our water heater had burst that weekend, and I had to deal with a flooded basement alone while he couldn't get away. He wasn't in Chicago. He was holding another woman's hand while she gave birth to his secret sons. I sat on the dusty floorboards, hugging my knees to my chest. I wanted to scream, to smash the walls I was supposed to be fixing, but I couldn't make a sound. The betrayal was so deep it felt physical, like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just an affair. A fling is a mistake. A mistake is a late-night text or a drunken kiss. This was a whole separate life. He was a father to 2 other children. He bought diapers, he warmed bottles, he probably read them bedtime stories, all while telling me we couldn't afford a family vacation this year. $20,000, I whispered to the empty room. That cash wasn't a rainy day fund, it was their fund. I scrambled up, fueled by a sudden cold rage. I needed to see her. I needed to know who this woman was who was living my husband's other life. I grabbed my laptop from the kitchen island and sat at the table, my hands trembling as I typed Elena Russo into the search bar. Common name. Too many results. I went back to the lease agreement I found in the box. 1402 Highland Avenue, Apt 4B. I added the city name to the search. Bingo. The first result was a public Instagram profile. My breath hitched. She was beautiful, undeniably, Younger than me, maybe early 30s, with glowing skin and a smile that looked effortless. But I didn't care about her looks. I scrolled down, my eyes scanning for him. It didn't take long. There he was, a photo from last Christmas. Mark was wearing a Santa hat, holding 2 toddlers in matching red pajamas. The caption read, "My boys with their daddy. Best Christmas ever. #blessed. #family of 4. I felt sick. Last Christmas, Mark had told me he had to work half day on Christmas Eve. He came home late, smelling of peppermint and exhaustion. I thought he had been crunching numbers at the office. He was playing Santa for his other family. I kept scrolling, torturing myself with every image. Mark at a birthday party, Mark at the zoo, Mark pushing a double stroller. Then I froze. There was a post from 3 months ago. It was a video. Elena was filming Mark pushing the boys on a swing set. He looked happy, genuinely happy. Not the stressed, withdrawn man who walked around our house like a ghost. In the video, one of the boys shouted, "Higher, Daddy, higher!" And Mark laughed, that deep belly laugh I hadn't heard in years. "You liar," I hissed at the screen, tears finally stinging my eyes. "You absolute fraud!" My phone buzzed on the table, making me jump. The screen lit up. Hubby calling. I stared at it. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. If I didn't answer, he'd get suspicious. He was controlling like that. He always needed to know where I was. I took a deep breath, wiped my eyes, and forced my voice to stop shaking. "Hey, babe," I answered, putting him on speaker. "Hey!" Mark's voice was casual, accompanied by the sound of wind in the background. "Just checking in. How's the demo going?" "It's coming along," I lied, looking at the hole in the wall and the open lockbox. "Just taking a break. How's the lake? How's your sister?" "Oh, it's great," he said easily. "Karen is cooking up a storm. The kids are down by the water with her. I just stepped away to get some signal. Karen says hi, by the way." "Tell her I said hi back," I said, gripping the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turned white. "Will do. Listen, I might lose service again. Just wanted to tell you I love you. Don't work too hard." "Love you too," I said. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. The line went dead. He was lying. I knew it in my bones. But I needed proof, irrefutable proof. Mark said he was with his sister, Karen, at her lake house 3 hours away. I knew Karen. We weren't best friends, but we were cordial. She was a nurse, busy, always running around. I pulled up my contacts and found Karen's number. My thumb hovered over the call button. If I called her, I was blowing this whole thing wide open. If Mark was there, I'd look crazy. But if he wasn't, I pressed call. It rang 4 times. "Hello?" Karen's voice sounded groggy, like I'd woken her up. "Hey, Karen, it's Maya. So sorry to bother you." "Maya? Is everything okay? It's kind of early." "Yeah, everything's fine. I forgot to send Chloe's asthma inhaler with Mark. I was worried she might need it with all the dust at the lake house. Can you just check if he packed the spare in the side pocket of her bag?" There was a long silence on the other end. "The lake house?" Karen asked, confused. "Maya, what are you talking about? I'm at my apartment. I'm on a night shift rotation this weekend." My stomach dropped through the floor. You're not at the lake?" "No, I haven't been to the lake in months, and I haven't seen Mark since Thanksgiving. Is he supposed to be here?" I closed my eyes. The puzzle pieces slammed together. "No," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I must have misunderstood. Sorry, Karen. Go back to sleep." I hung up before she could ask any more questions. He wasn't with his sister. He wasn't camping. He had taken our children, my babies, to her. He had taken Chloe and our son to meet her other family, probably playing it off as a play date with friends. But as I looked back at the lockbox, I noticed something sticking out of the manila envelope that I had missed before. It was a folded piece of notebook paper. I unfolded it. It wasn't a document, it was a list. Handwritten, to-do list. Liquidate joint savings, done. Sell the boat, done. Finalize visas for Italy. List the house, October. I looked at the calendar on the wall. It was October 12th. List the house. He wasn't just cheating. He wasn't just living a double life. He was planning to sell our home right out under my nose and run away with her. And then a notification popped up on my laptop screen. It was an email alert from our bank. Withdrawal alert, $5,000 from joint savings. Location, O'Hare International Airport. He wasn't at a lake. He wasn't even in the state anymore. If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more. O'Hare Airport. The words on the bank alert flashed on my screen like a neon warning sign. My stomach turned to ice. He wasn't camping at a lake 3 hours away. He was at the international terminal, and he had Chloe and Sam with him. I scrambled for my phone, my fingers flying across the screen to open the Find Me app. Loading. There it was, a blue dot pulsing right in the middle of Terminal 5. International departures. No, I whispered, pacing the kitchen floor in tight, frantic circles. You can't take them. You can't just take them. I dialed Mark again, straight to voicemail. I dialed my son Sam's iPad. Ringing. Hello? A small voice answered. It was Sam. Sam! I choked out, tears instantly blurring my vision. Sam, honey, where are you? We're at the airport, Mom, he sounded, excited, not scared. Dad said we're going on a secret adventure on a big plane. Is it a surprise? Are you coming too? My heart shattered. Mark had framed it as a surprise vacation. Sam, listen to me carefully. I need you to... Sam, put that away. I heard Mark's stern voice in the background. We're boarding soon. No devices. But Mom is... I said, put it away. The line went dead. I stood there, gripping the counter, hyperventilating. They were boarding. They were leaving the country. I was helpless. But before I could grab my keys and race to the airport, a futile hour-long drive, a car door slammed in my driveway. I froze. Had he come back? I ran to the window. It wasn't Mark's truck. It was a silver sedan with a Prestige Realty magnet on the door. A woman in a sharp blazer was walking up my path, holding a clipboard and a heavy set of keys. I threw the front door open before she could even knock. She jumped back, startled. Oh, Mrs. Miller? I thought the house was vacant. Vacant? I stared at her, my chest heaving. I live here. Who are you? I'm Jessica, from Prestige Realty. She looked confused, checking her phone. Mark, your husband? He confirmed the appointment this morning. He said you'd be gone for the weekend and that the house was ready for the final walkthrough. Walkthrough? My voice rose an octave. We haven't even listed the house yet. Jessica's face went pale. She pulled a file from her bag. Mrs. Miller, the house isn't just listed, it's sold. The cash closing is scheduled for Tuesday. I'm just here to verify the repairs were done. Sold? The world tilted on its axis. I never signed anything. My name is on the deed. You can't sell a house without the spouse's signature. Jessica hesitated, then handed me a document from the folder. Well, according to this, you gave Mark full power of attorney over the property 3 weeks ago. Here's your signature. I snatched the paper. There it was, my signature. A perfect forgery. It looked exactly like mine. The loop on the M, the sharp Y. He must have practiced it for hours. But it wasn't the signature that made my blood run cold. It was the stamp at the bottom, the notary seal. A notary is supposed to verify the person signing is actually standing right there in front of them. I looked at the name on the stamp. Notary Public, Sarah J. Bennett. Sarah, my best friend of 20 years, the woman who was the maid of honor at my wedding, the woman who held my hand when I gave birth to Sam, the woman who came over for wine nights every Friday. She had notarized a fake document to help my husband sell our home and steal our children. I looked up at the realtor, my eyes burning. I said quietly, "Get out." "Excuse me?" I said, "Get out!" I screamed, slamming the door in her face. I leaned against the door, sliding down until I hit the floor. The walls of the house I loved, the house I had spent 10 years making a home, suddenly felt like a cage. Mark had planned this perfectly. He had the money, he had the girl, he had the kids, and he had the house. And he had help from the one person I trusted almost as much as him. But as I sat there, trying to process the double betrayal, my phone pinged with a text. It wasn't Mark. It wasn't Sarah. It was a number I didn't recognize. I opened it. There was no text, just a picture. It was a photo of a boarding pass, Chicago to Rome. And then a second message bubbled up. "I know what he's doing, and I know you're alone. Check the basement freezer, bottom shelf, under the frozen peas." If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more. I didn't ask questions. I didn't stop to think. I just ran. I tore down the basement stairs, nearly tripping over a pile of laundry I'd meant to wash 3 days ago. The basement smelled like mildew and old cardboard. I yanked the handle of the chest freezer so hard the heavy lid slammed against the wall behind it. Cold mist hit my face. I started digging frantically, tossing aside cartons of ice cream and bags of frozen chicken nuggets. My hands were burning from the cold, but I couldn't stop. Bottom shelf, under the peas. There it was, a bag of store-brand frozen peas that looked like it had been there since the Ice Age. I lifted it up. Taped to the white plastic bottom of the freezer was a heavy-duty Ziploc bag. I ripped it free and tore it open. Inside wasn't money, it wasn't a confession letter. It was a cheap, prepaid flip phone and a single, heavy brass key. Before I could even examine the key, the flip phone in my hand started buzzing. The screen flashed a single word, "Incoming." My thumb hovered over the green button. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Was it Mark? Was he taunting me? I flipped it open and pressed it to my ear. "Where are my children?" I screamed into the receiver. "Lower your voice, Maya. You're running out of time." It wasn't Mark. It was a woman's voice, smooth, slightly accented, and terrifyingly calm. I froze. I recognized that voice from the video I'd watched upstairs. "Elena?" I whispered. You have my kids?" "I don't have them," Elena said, her voice tight, "and neither do you. We're both victims here, honey. He played us. He played us both like a cheap fiddle." "I don't care about your sob story," I yelled. "He's taking them to Rome. I saw the boarding pass." "That's a decoy," Elena snapped. "Mark knew you'd find the bank alert. He knew you'd track his phone. He wanted you looking at the flight to Italy so you wouldn't notice the private charter flight booked under a shell company." "Private charter?" My knees gave out and I sat on the freezing concrete floor. "Where is he going?" "Belize, non-extradition. Once those wheels go up, you will never see Sam or Chloe again. He's got false passports for them, Maya. I saw them." "Why are you telling me this?" I cried. "You're the other woman. You're the reason my marriage is dead." "Because he promised me that flight," Elena hissed, and for the first time I heard the crack in her composure. He promised me we were going to be a family, me, him, and our twins. But when I got to the hangar today, he wasn't there to pick me up. He left me, Maya. He left me and his own sons behind with nothing but a text message saying sorry. He's running alone? I asked, confused. No, Elena let out a dark, bitter laugh. He's not alone. He found someone new, someone who could help him liquidate your assets fast, someone who could forge a signature better than anyone else. My blood ran cold. The notary stamp. Sarah, I breathed. Bingo, Elena said. Your best friend isn't just a notary, Maya. She's been sleeping with him for 6 months. She's on that plane right now, holding your daughter's hand. I felt like I was going to throw up. Sarah, my Sarah, the woman I cried to about my marriage problems. She wasn't just helping him, she was replacing me. The plane leaves in 45 minutes, Elena continued, her voice urgent again. You can't stop the plane. The police won't get there in time for a domestic dispute, but you have the key, don't you? I looked down at the brass key in my lap. Yes. That key opens a storage unit downtown, Unit 303. Mark is paranoid, Maya. He keeps insurance on everyone. Inside that unit is a hard drive. It has everything, the embezzlement from his company, the illegal wire transfers, the forged deeds. If you get that drive to the authorities, they can ground that plane instantly. It turns this from a custody battle into a federal manhunt. Why didn't you get it? I asked, scrambling to my feet. Because he changed the code to the facility, but he never changed the lock on the unit itself. You know the gate code, Maya. Think, what's the one number he never forgets? I closed my eyes. 880, his old Jersey number. I'm going, I said, grabbing my car keys. Run, Maya. Burn him to the ground. I hung up and sprinted to my car. I had 30 minutes to cross town, break into a storage unit, and stop a plane before my children disappeared forever. But as I peeled out of the driveway, I didn't notice the black SUV parked down the street. As soon as I turned the corner, its engine roared to life and it pulled out to follow me. Mark had insurance on everyone, and he wasn't about to let me open Unit 303. If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more. I floored the gas pedal, weaving through the Saturday afternoon traffic. My old sedan rattled as the speedometer crept past 80. Every time I checked the rearview mirror, that black SUV was there. It wasn't just following me, it was hunting me. I took a sharp right turn, tires screeching, cutting through a gas station to bypass a red light. The SUV hopped the curb and stayed right on my tail. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might crack a rib. This wasn't just a paranoia thing. Whoever was in that car wanted to stop me from reaching Unit 303. Come on, I muttered, gripping the wheel until my knuckles turned white. I saw the sign for City Center Self-Storage up ahead. It was an industrial wasteland, rusty fences, barbed wire, and rows of orange metal doors. I swerved into the entrance lane. The SUV was seconds behind me. If I fumbled the code, they would rear-end me right into the gate. I rolled down the window, my fingers shaking as I punched the keypad. 880, hash key. For a terrifying second, nothing happened. I watched the SUV roar toward me in the mirror. Then, with a loud clank, the chain-link gate started to slide open. I didn't wait for it to open all the way. I stomped on the gas, scraping the side of my car against the metal fence as I squeezed through. The gate began to close automatically behind me. The SUV screeched to a halt on the other side. The driver hadn't made the cut. I let out a scream of relief, half laughing, half sobbing. I had bought myself maybe 2 minutes before they figured out how to jump the fence or ram the gate. I drove deep into the facility, scanning the numbers. 100s, 200s, 303. There it was, an orange door, chipped paint, looking totally ordinary. I jumped out of the car, leaving the engine running. I jammed the brass key Elena had given me into the padlock. It was stiff. "Please," I begged, "please open." I twisted it with both hands. The lock snapped open. I threw the rolling door up. The smell of stale paper hit me instantly. The unit wasn't empty. It was filled with file cabinets, rows of them. Mark wasn't just hiding his life with Elena, he was hiding everything. But I didn't have time to look through files. I needed the hard drive. Elena said, "Look for the red safe." I scanned the room. There, in the corner, sat a small, fireproof red box. It wasn't locked. I opened it. Inside, nestled in foam, was a silver external hard drive and a passport. I grabbed the passport first. It was Mark's face, but the name said Marcus Vance. I grabbed the hard drive. This was it, the leverage, the weapon. I turned to run back to my car, clutching the drive to my chest like a shield. But as I stepped out of the unit, my blood froze. The black SUV hadn't stayed outside. It had rammed through the pedestrian gate and was now parked sideways, blocking the end of the row. My car was boxed in. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. He was holding a tire iron. It wasn't a stranger, and it wasn't a hired goon. It was David, Mark's older brother, the uncle who bought my kids ice cream, the man who toasted us at our wedding. He looked at me, his face grim, eyes cold. "Give me the drive, Maya," David said calmly, slapping the tire iron against his palm. "Mark said you might be a problem. Don't make me hurt you. Just hand it over and you can go home." "Home?" I shouted, backing up toward the open storage unit. "He sold my home, David. He stole my children. And you're helping him?" "Mark's family," David shrugged, taking a step closer. "And family protects family, even when it gets messy." He lunged at me. I didn't think. I reacted. I threw the heavy brass padlock I was still holding straight at his face. It connected with a sickening crack against his forehead. David stumbled back, dropping the tire iron, blood gushing from a cut above his eye. I didn't wait to see if he was okay. I scrambled into my car, threw it in reverse, and slammed on the gas. I didn't aim for the exit. I aimed for the gap between David's SUV and the wall. My car scraped, metal shrieking against metal, sparks flying everywhere. The side mirror snapped off, but I pushed through. I burst out of the row and sped toward the exit gate. It was still closed. I didn't have a code to get out. I looked in the rearview mirror. David was back on his feet, blood running down his face, running toward his SUV. I looked at the gate, then I looked at the speedometer. "Sorry, car," I whispered. I gripped the wheel, closed my eyes for a split second, and floored it. Crash! The impact was violent. The airbag didn't deploy, thank God, but my head slammed against the headrest. The chain-link gate buckled and tore off its hinges, flying onto the street. I kept driving. My hood was crumpled, steam was hissing from the radiator, but the car was moving. I was free, but I wasn't safe. My phone rang again. It was Elena. "Did you get it?" she asked breathlessly. "I got it," I gasped, checking my mirrors for David. "But his brother was there. Mark knows I'm coming." "Good," Elena said, "because plans have changed. You can't go to the police station. Mark has friends there too. Remember the corruption I told you about? If you walk into that precinct, that drive disappears and you go to jail for reckless driving." "Then what do I do?" I screamed, hitting the steering wheel. "The plane leaves in 20 minutes." "Go to the airfield," Elena commanded. "Drive straight onto the tarmac, but don't go to the main gate. Go to Hangar 4. I'll meet you there." "You?" I asked. "I thought you were stranded." "I was." Elena's voice turned icy. "But I still have a key to Mark's other car, and I brought something better than a tire iron." If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more. My car finally died about 100 yards from the airfield fence. The radiator blew with a loud hiss, sending a cloud of white steam into the air. I didn't even turn off the ignition. I just grabbed the hard drive, kicked the door open, and started running. My lungs were burning. My head throbbed where I'd hit the head nest, but I could see Hangar 4 ahead. It was a rusty, corrugated metal building away from the main terminal. Parked in the shadows was a car I recognized instantly. Mark's baby, a vintage red convertible Mustang he spent more time polishing than he did playing with his son. Elena was behind the wheel. She looked different than she did in the photos. Her hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, and she was wearing a leather jacket that looked too big for her. "Get in!" she screamed over the roar of the wind. I vaulted into the passenger seat, clutching the hard drive like my life depended on it, because it did. "He's at the private strip," Elena yelled, shifting gears. The tires squealed as she slammed on the gas. "We have maybe 5 minutes before wheels up." "How are we getting on the tarmac?" I shouted back, gripping the dashboard. "There's security." "Watch me," Elena said grimly. She didn't head for a gate. She headed for a section of the perimeter fence that looked slightly bent. She floored the Mustang. "Hold on!" We hit the chain-link fence at 60 miles an hour. Crash! The fence snapped and folded under the car. Glass from the headlights shattered, but we punched through, bouncing violently onto the paved runway. We were in. The airfield was massive, a maze of concrete and yellow lines. But I saw it. About half a mile down, a sleek white jet was sitting with its engines whining, a high-pitched scream that vibrated in my chest. And there, at the bottom of the metal stairs, was a group of people. Elena sped toward them, the engine roaring. As we got closer, the figures became clear. My heart stopped. There was Mark. He was wearing a suit, looking impatient, checking his watch. And standing next to him, holding my daughter Chloe's hand, was Sarah. My best friend was wearing a sun hat and sunglasses, looking like she was ready for a Roman holiday. Sam was standing by Mark's leg, looking confused and scared, holding his favorite teddy bear. "No!" I screamed, the sound tearing from my throat. "Sam! Chloe!" Mark looked up. He saw the red Mustang barreling. My car finally died about 100 yards from the airfield fence. The radiator blew with a loud hiss, sending a cloud of white steam into the air. I didn't even turn off the ignition. I just grabbed the hard drive, kicked the door open, and started running. My lungs were burning. My head throbbed where I'd hit the head nest, but I could see Hangar 4 ahead. It was a rusty, corrugated metal building away from the main terminal. Parked in the shadows was a car I recognized instantly. Mark's baby, a vintage red convertible Mustang he spent more time polishing than he did playing with his son. Elena was behind the wheel. She looked different than she did in the photos. Her hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, and she was wearing a leather jacket that looked too big for her. "Get in!" she screamed over the roar of the wind. I vaulted into the passenger seat, clutching the hard drive like my life depended on it, because it did. "He's at the private strip," Elena yelled, shifting gears. The tires squealed as she slammed on the gas. "We have maybe 5 minutes before wheels up." "How are we getting on the tarmac?" I shouted back, gripping the dashboard. "There's security." "Watch me," Elena said grimly. She didn't head for a gate. She headed for a section of the perimeter fence that looked slightly bent. She floored the Mustang. "Hold on!" We hit the chain-link fence at 60 miles an hour. Crash! The fence snapped and folded under the car. Glass from the headlights shattered, but we punched through, bouncing violently onto the paved runway. We were in. The airfield was massive, a maze of concrete and yellow lines. But I saw it. About half a mile down, a sleek white jet was sitting with its engines whining, a high-pitched scream that vibrated in my chest. And there, at the bottom of the metal stairs, was a group of people. Elena sped toward them, the engine roaring. As we got closer, the figures became clear. My heart stopped. There was Mark. He was wearing a suit, looking impatient, checking his watch. And standing next to him, holding my daughter Chloe's hand, was Sarah. My best friend was wearing a sun hat and sunglasses, looking like she was ready for a Roman holiday. Sam was standing by Mark's leg, looking confused and scared, holding his favorite teddy bear. "No!" I screamed, the sound tearing from my throat. "Sam! Chloe!" Mark looked up. He saw the red Mustang barreling toward them. His face went from annoyance to pure panic. He didn't wave or yell. He grabbed Sam by the back of his shirt and shoved him up the stairs. "Go! Get inside!" I saw him mouth the words. Sarah scooped up Chloe, who was crying now, and ran up the steps behind him. "He's boarding!" I yelled at Elena. "Ram the stairs! Don't let them close the door!" Elena swerved, trying to cut off the angle, but Mark was fast. He jumped onto the stairs last, grabbed the handle, and the motorized door began to lift. We were 50 feet away. 40. 30. The door sealed shut with a final thud just as we screeched to a halt right next to the plane's landing gear. "Open the door, Mark!" I screamed, banging my fists on the side of the fuselage. The metal was cold and vibrating from the engines. "Get back in the car!" Elena shouted, grabbing my arm. "We can't stop it from here. We have to block the runway." I scrambled back into the Mustang. We spun around, tires smoking, racing ahead of the plane to cut it off before it could pick up speed. But just as Elena straightened the wheel, flashing blue and red lights filled the rearview mirror. 2 police cruisers were tearing across the tarmac behind us. "Thank God!" I cried, pointing. "The police! They'll stop him!" Elena looked in the mirror and her face went pale. "No, Maya, look closely." I squinted. The police cars weren't swerving toward the plane to block it. They were swerving towards us. They were coming to clear the runway for Mark. "They're not here to help," Elena whispered. "They're his escort." The lead police cruiser slammed into the back bumper of our Mustang, sending us spinning out of control. The world was a blur of sky and concrete. We skidded sideways, coming to a halt in the grass just off the runway. My head was spinning. I looked up through the windshield. The white jet was accelerating. It roared past us, picking up speed. Mark, Sarah, and my babies were inside, and the corrupt police were boxing us in, officers stepping out with guns drawn, pointing them straight at us. "It's over," I sobbed, watching the plane's nose lift off the ground. "He won." "Not yet," Elena said. She reached under her seat and pulled out a microphone connected to the car's radio system. But it wasn't a radio. It was a CB transmitter. "Mark forgot one thing," she said, staring at the plane climbing into the sky. "Mark forgot that my brother isn't a corrupt cop. He works for air traffic control." She clicked the mic. "Tower, this is Redbird. Flight 880 has a bomb on board. Repeat, bomb on board." If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more. Bomb on board. Those 3 words hung in the air like smoke. The police officers surrounding our car hesitated. I saw their eyes darting around, uncertainty cracking their tough exteriors. Even the corrupt ones couldn't ignore a call like that on an open channel. Then the radio in the cruiser closest to us crackled to life. "All units, code red, ground stop immediately. Flight 880, return to tarmac. Potential explosive device reported." The white jet, which had just started climbing into the gray sky, banked sharp left. It was coming back. Elena looked at me and smiled, a wild, desperate smile with blood on her teeth from the crash. He can bribe a cop, Maya, but he can't bribe the FAA. They take bomb threats seriously." The officers snapped out of their daze. They yanked our car doors open and dragged us out, slamming us onto the wet grass. "You're making a big mistake," I screamed as cold metal handcuffs clicked tight around my wrists. "He's kidnapping my children. He's the criminal." "Shut up," one officer barked, shoving my head down as he pushed me into the back of a squad car. Elena was thrown in next to me. We were trapped behind the wire mesh, helpless spectators. I watched through the window as the jet touched down. It taxied to a remote corner of the runway, instantly surrounded by flashing lights. Fire trucks, SWAT vans, and unmarked black cars swarmed the plane like angry hornets. The cabin door opened. My heart hammered against my ribs. Mark walked out first, his hands raised. He looked terrified, shaking, pale, the picture of an innocent victim. He was so good at this. He was an actor, and this was his greatest performance. Then Sarah came out, holding Chloe tight. Then Sam, clutching his teddy bear, looking small and confused. I slammed my body against the reinforced window. "Sam! Chloe! Mommy's here!" They couldn't hear me. They were hundreds of yards away. But then, everything went wrong. Mark walked straight to the lead police officer, the same guy who had rammed our car, the one on his payroll. They spoke for a second in hushed tones. The officer nodded and patted Mark on the shoulder sympathetically. Mark turned and pointed directly at our squad car. He made a spinning motion with his finger near his head. Crazy. He was telling them I was insane, that I had called in the fake threat. The corrupt officer walked over to the wrecked Mustang. He reached through the broken window and grabbed the red fireproof box. My hard drive, my evidence, my only leverage. He walked back to Mark and handed it to him. "No!" I screamed, kicking the door. "That's evidence! Don't give it to him!" Mark took the drive. He looked right at me across the tarmac, even though I knew he couldn't see my eyes. And he smiled, a cold, dead smile that chilled me to the bone. He dropped the hard drive onto the concrete. And then he stomped on it. Crack! He stomped again and again, grinding his heel into the silver casing until it was nothing but twisted metal and plastic shards. "It's gone," I sobbed, slumping against the seat. "He won! He destroyed the proof!" Elena was silent next to me. She wasn't looking at Mark. She was staring intently at the black, unmarked cars that had just arrived on the scene. "Maya," she whispered, "look at the jackets." I wiped my tears and looked. Men in blue windbreakers were stepping out of the black sedans. On the back, in bold yellow letters, it said, FBI. Mark saw them too. His smile vanished instantly. The local cops tried to intercept them, but the agents pushed right past. An agent with steel gray hair walked straight up to Mark. He didn't shake his hand. He didn't offer sympathy. He grabbed Mark's wrist and spun him around, patting him down aggressively. Mark started shouting, pointing at our car, pointing at the plane, playing the victim card again. The agent ignored him. He walked over to the pile of smashed plastic that used to be the hard drive. He picked up a piece with a gloved hand, examined it, and then looked directly at our squad car. He walked over and opened the back door. "Mrs. Miller?" His voice was gruff, no nonsense. "Yes," I choked out. "Please, you have to listen. He's stealing my kids. He just destroyed the evidence." The agent looked at Mark, then back at me. "We've been tracking a money laundering ring out of Belize for 6 months. We knew Mark was a player, but we couldn't pin him down. The bomb threat gave us the probable cause we needed to search the plane and seize his electronics." "But the drive is gone," I cried, pointing to the debris. "He smashed it." The agent smirked, a tiny twitch of his lips. He smashed a decoy, Mrs. Miller. We cloned his cloud server 20 minutes ago when he logged into the plane's Wi-Fi. We have everything. My jaw dropped. Relief washed over me so strong I felt dizzy. So you're arresting him? I get my kids back? The agent's face turned serious. We have a problem. We can arrest him for the financial crimes, but the kidnapping? Technically, he has full custody. What? I gasped. That's impossible. He showed us the court order, the agent said, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. Signed by a judge this morning. Emergency sole custody granted to Mark Miller due to the mother's imminent mental breakdown and violent behavior. I felt like I'd been slapped. That's a lie! He forged it, just like he forged the house deed. The signature is real, Maya, Mark shouted from across the tarmac, his confidence returning. And the order stands. You're unstable. The agent sighed. Until we can prove the judge is crooked, my hands are tied on the kids. They go to Child Protective Services or a designated guardian until the arraignment. Who's the guardian? I asked, trembling. The order lists Sarah Bennett. No, I screamed, struggling against the cuffs. She's in it! She's his mistress! I'm sorry, the agent said, starting to close the door. It's a valid legal document. Wait, Elena yelled suddenly. The judge! What's the judge's name? The agent paused, checking the paper. Judge Reynolds. Why? Elena looked at me, her eyes wide with realization. Because, she said, her voice shaking, Judge Reynolds isn't just Mark's friend. He's Sarah's father. Judge Reynolds is her father? The FBI agent froze, his hand hovering over the door handle of the squad car. He looked at the paperwork in his hand and back at the woman standing near the jet, Sarah, who was currently buckling my terrified daughter into a luxury SUV provided by the airport. Yes, I screamed, slamming my cuffed hands against the window. Look at the last names, Sarah Reynolds Bennett. It's a conflict of interest. It's fraud. If you let her take my kids, you are aiding a kidnapping. The agent stared at me for a split second, his jaw tight. Then he looked at Sarah. She was smiling, that same fake, sweet smile she used when she'd bring over a casserole while secretly sleeping with my husband. She waved at the police, acting like the grieving aunt saving the children from a crazy mother. This is where the story truly begins. Before we dive in, what time is it where you are? Which country are you watching from? Leave a comment and let me know. And please hit that like button and subscribe to become part of Mama Joyce's Chronicles community for more inspiring stories. Stay here, the agent commanded, locking the door. I watched, my breath fogging up the glass as the agent pulled out his radio and marched across the tarmac. He didn't walk toward Mark. He walked straight toward the SUV where Sarah was sitting in the driver's seat. Mark saw him coming. I saw Mark's eyes widen. He tried to step in front of the agent, putting on his best concerned father face. He grabbed the agent's arm. Bad move. The agent didn't even slow down. He stiff-armed Mark, shoving him back so hard he stumbled and fell onto the wet concrete. The agent tapped on the SUV window. Sarah rolled it down, looking annoyed. I could see her mouth moving, probably saying something like, "Is there a problem, officer?" The agent didn't answer. He reached through the open window, unlocked the door, and yanked it open. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am," he barked. "What is the meaning of this?" Sarah shrieked, her voice high-pitched and panicked, carrying over the wind. "I have a court order." "We just ran a background check on Judge Reynolds. He's currently under federal investigation for racketeering, and since you are his biologically daughter, that court order is now evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud." "No!" Sarah screamed, clawing at the doorframe as two other agents swarmed in. "You can't touch me! My father will have your badges!" Your father is going to be sharing a cell with you, the agent said calmly. He spun her around and slapped the handcuffs on her wrists. Click, click. I collapsed against the seat, sobbing, not tears of sadness, but tears of pure, overwhelming relief. They had her, the woman who smiled in my face for 20 years while stabbing me in the back, was finally in cuffs. Another agent gently opened the back door of the SUV. He unbuckled Chloe and Sam. I watched him as he led them away from the car, shielding their eyes from the scene. "Bring them here!" I yelled, banging on the glass. "Please!" The agent who had arrested Sarah walked back to our squad car. He opened the door and uncuffed me. "Mrs. Miller, you're free to go. Your children are safe." I didn't wait for an apology. I scrambled out of the car and sprinted across the tarmac. "Mommy!" Sam screamed, breaking away from the agent holding his hand. I fell to my knees on the hard concrete, ignoring the pain, and scooped both of them into my arms. I buried my face in their necks, smelling their hair, their shampoo, the scent of my babies. "I've got you," I whispered, rocking them back and forth. "I've got you, and I'm never letting go." But the nightmare wasn't over yet. A sudden commotion made me look up. Mark was still on the ground where the agent had shoved him. He was watching Sarah get dragged into a police van. He watched me holding the kids. His face wasn't scared anymore. It wasn't charming. It was twisted into something ugly and feral. The mask was completely gone. He realized he had lost. The money was gone. The mistress had turned on him. The best friend was arrested. The kids were back with me. He had nothing left to lose. And a man with nothing to lose is the most dangerous thing in the world. Mark scrambled to his feet. He didn't run away. He didn't surrender. He lunged toward the nearest police officer, a rookie standing by the wing of the plane, looking distracted. Before anyone could react, Mark grabbed the officer's gun from his holster. "Everybody back!" Mark screamed, pointing the gun wildly. The agents drew their weapons instantly. "Drop it! Drop the weapon!" But Mark didn't aim at the police. He turned and sprinted, not toward the exit. He sprinted toward me and the kids. "Mark, no!" I screamed, trying to shield Sam and Chloe with my body. He grabbed me by the back of my jacket and yanked me up, jamming the barrel of the gun against my temple. "Don't move," he roared at the agents, dragging me backward toward the open door of the jet. "I'm taking the plane, and she's coming with me." I felt the cold steel against my skin. I heard my children screaming for me. "Let them go," he hissed in my ear, his breath hot and smelling of coffee and mints. "You wanted to ruin me, Maya? Fine, then we go down together." He dragged me up the metal stairs of the jet. "Close the door!" he screamed at the pilot, who was still in the cockpit. The motorized door began to whine and lift. I was trapped. He was taking me hostage. But as the door started to close, cutting off the view of the police and my screaming children, I saw something move in the shadows of the plane's cabin. Mark thought the plane was empty. He was wrong. If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more. The heavy door of the jet hissed and sealed shut, locking us inside a metal tube of recycled air and terror. The screams of the police and my children outside were instantly cut off, replaced by the hum of the auxiliary power unit. Mark didn't waste a second. He shoved me down the narrow aisle, the barrel of the gun digging painfully into the base of my skull. "Move!" he screamed, his voice cracking with panic. "Get to the cockpit. We're taking off." "You can't fly a jet, Mark," I yelled back, stumbling over my own feet. "It's over. The FBI is right outside." "I don't need to fly it," he hissed, grabbing a fistful of my hair. "I just need the pilot to get us off the ground. Once we're in the air, I have leverage. I have a hostage." This is where the story truly begins. Before we dive in, what time is it where you are? Which country are you watching from? Leave a comment and let me know. And please hit that like button and subscribe to become part of Mama Joyce's Chronicles community for more inspiring stories. We burst into the cockpit. Mark threw me into the co-pilot seat and spun around, leveling the gun at the captain's chair. "Punch it," Mark roared. "Get us wheels up now, or I swear to God I will—" He stopped dead. The captain's chair was empty. The headset was dangling from the yoke, swaying slightly. The instrument panel was lit up like a Christmas tree, but there was nobody there to fly the plane. The pilot had escaped through the emergency hatch in the floor the second the SWAT team arrived. "No," Mark whispered, his face draining of color. He looked around the tiny cockpit, his eyes wild. "No!" He slammed his hand against the throttle, but nothing happened. We were sitting ducks. Mark spun around to face me, sweat pouring down his forehead. "You," he growled, pointing the gun at my chest. "This is your fault. If you had just stayed stupid, if you had just let me leave." "I was stealing my children, Mark," I shouted, adrenaline masking my fear. "I was never gonna let you leave." "Well, now nobody leaves," he said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register. He clicked the safety off. "If I'm going to prison, I'm going down for something worth it." He raised the gun to my face. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the flash, for the end. Click-clack. The sound of a shotgun racking a shell echoed from the back of the plane. Mark froze. I opened my eyes. We weren't alone. Standing in the doorway of the first-class cabin, leaning heavily against the bulkhead, was a figure I recognized instantly. But he didn't look like the clean-cut corporate man I knew. Blood was dried down the side of his face from a nasty gash on his forehead. His expensive suit was torn. He looked like a ghost who had crawled out of a grave. "David?" Mark breathed, lowering his handgun slightly. "Brother? Thank God, we can still—" "Shut up, Mark," David said. His voice was cold, devoid of any brotherly love. He raised a sawed-off shotgun, the kind security guards carry, leveling it straight at Mark's chest. "David, wait," Mark stammered, stepping back, pulling me in front of him as a human shield. "I know it looks bad, but I have the money, the crypto wallets. I can transfer you your cut right now. Just help me with the police." David let out a dry, wheezing laugh. He stepped closer, limping. "My cut? You mean the cut you transferred out of the joint account 10 minutes ago? I got the alert, Mark. You cleaned me out. You were going to leave me holding the bag for the embezzlement while you sipped mojitos in Belize." "It was a mistake," Mark pleaded, his grip on my arm tightening until it bruised. "I was going to send it to you when I landed. We're family." "I'm not your family," David spat, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Just another loose end you tried to cut. Well, guess what, little brother? The loose end is here to tie you up." The tension in the cabin was so thick I could taste it. I was trapped between two men who had lost everything, one desperate to escape, the other desperate for revenge. I looked at David's eyes. They weren't focused on me, they were locked on Mark. He didn't care if I got hurt, he just wanted Mark dead. "David, don't!" I screamed. "The fuel tanks! If you shoot that thing in here, you'll blow us all up!" "At least I'll die rich," David muttered. Mark panicked. He knew David was serious. "Maya, do something!" Mark shrieked, cowering behind me. "Tell him to put it down!" I realized in that split second that I was the only thing keeping David from pulling the trigger, and I realized something else. Mark was distracted. His gun was no longer pressed against my head. It was pointed vaguely towards David. It was now or never. I didn't scream. I didn't hesitate. I threw my entire body weight backward, driving my elbow into Mark's solar plexus with every ounce of strength I had left. Mark gasped, doubling over, his grip loosening just enough. I dropped to the floor and scrambled under the instrument panel. "No!" Mark shouted. Without his human shield, Mark was exposed. David smiled. "Goodbye, Mark." Boom! The shotgun blast was deafening in the enclosed space. It blew out the cockpit window, shattering the glass and sending a rush of cold air swirling into the cabin. But David had missed. Mark had dived behind the pilot seat just in time. The buckshot tore into the leather headrest, shredding it to pieces. "You psycho!" Mark screamed, popping up and firing his handgun blindly. Bang, bang, bang! One of the bullets hit the fire extinguisher mounted on the wall next to David. It exploded in a cloud of white chemical foam, instantly filling the cabin with a blinding fog. I couldn't see anything. All I could hear was coughing, shouting, and the sounds of two men wrestling on the floor of the first-class cabin. I crawled on my hands and knees, choking on the chemical dust, feeling for the emergency exit lever on the side of the cockpit door. I found it, a red handle. Pull to arm. I grabbed it with both hands and yanked it down. Then I pushed the door release. The explosive bolts on the emergency slide detonated. Wham! The door blew outward. Fresh air rushed in, clearing the white smoke for a split second. I looked back. Mark was on top of David, strangling him, but David had reached for a shard of glass from the broken fire extinguisher. As I stood on the edge of the open door, ready to jump onto the yellow slide, I saw Mark look up at me. His eyes were red, filled with hate. He let go of David. He scrambled to his feet, ignoring the blood dripping from his face, and lunged towards me. "You're not leaving me," he screamed, grabbing my ankle just as I jumped. If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more. I felt the rush of wind and the terrifying pull of gravity as I slid down the inflatable yellow ramp. Mark's fingers were dug into my ankle like steel claws, dragging him out of the plane with me. He was screaming, a raw, animalistic sound that mixed with the sirens wailing all around us. "You're not going anywhere!" he shrieked, clawing at my jeans. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I kicked. I drove the heel of my sneaker straight into his nose. He howled in pain, and his grip finally slipped. I tumbled the last few feet, hitting the tarmac hard, rolling onto the grass. Mark came crashing down behind me, landing in a heap of limbs and blood. This is where the story truly begins. Before we dive in, what time is it where you are? Which country are you watching from? Leave a comment and let me know. And please hit that like button and subscribe to become part of Mama Joyce's Chronicles community for more inspiring stories. Before Mark could even try to stand up, the world turned into a sea of blue uniforms. "Federal agents! Down on the ground!" 5 agents were on top of him instantly. I watched from the grass, gasping for air, as they pressed his face into the concrete. The arrogance, the charm, the mask, it was all gone. He looked pathetic, just a man in a torn suit, crying because he got caught. I looked back up at the plane. EMS teams were swarming the emergency exit. They brought David out on a stretcher, handcuffed but alive. He glared at Mark as they wheeled him past. The brothers who tried to destroy each other would now have plenty of time to bond in federal prison. "Mom!" The voice cut through the chaos. I turned to see Sam and Chloe toward me. They broke into a run. I scrambled to my feet and caught them, dropping to my knees to hug them so tight I thought I might crush them. "It's over," I sobbed into Sam's hair. "It's finally over." Mark was being hauled up by the agents. As they dragged him toward the armored van, he locked eyes with me one last time. "You're nothing without me, Maya," he spat, blood dripping from his broken nose. "You can't pay the mortgage. You can't fix that house. You'll come crawling back." I stood up slowly, wiping the tears from my cheeks. I walked over to him, stopping just out of spitting distance. "Mark," I said, my voice steady and cold, I fixed the drywall by myself. I found your stash by myself. And I saved our children by myself. I don't need you. I never did." The agent shoved him into the van. The heavy door slammed shut with a finality that echoed in my soul. I watched the van drive away, and for the first time in years, the silence inside my head wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. 18 months later, the sun was streaming through the new bay window of my home office. It smelled of fresh coffee and lavender, not dust and secrets. I sat at my desk, my own desk, built with my own hands, and signed the final document on my tablet. "And sent," I smiled. "That's the last payment." "Paid off?" a voice asked from the doorway. I turned to see Elena standing there, holding 2 mugs of tea. She looked different, softer. The sharp edges of the desperate woman on the tarmac were gone. She was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, her hair loose. "Paid off," I confirmed, taking the tea. "The renovation loan is officially 0 balance. The house is all mine." It had been a hard year and a half. The trial was a media circus. The airport standoff was all over the news. Mark got 25 years for kidnapping, embezzlement, and armed assault. David got 15. Sarah, my best friend, and the judge's daughter got 10 years for fraud and conspiracy. It turned out she had been forging documents for her father's corrupt friends for years. Mark was just another client she slept with. Elena testified against Mark in exchange for immunity. We weren't exactly best friends, too much history there, but we were allies. We were survivors. And surprisingly, she was a great aunt to my kids. Her twins, Mark's other sons, came over for playdates every other weekend. We decided the boys shouldn't suffer for their father's sins. They were brothers after all. "You know," Elena said, looking at the wall where I found the safe that day, "you never did put anything back in that hole." I laughed, looking at the smooth, perfectly painted drywall. No more secret compartments, no more hidden boxes. "So what's the plan for today? Celebrate? Champagne?" "Better," I said, standing up and grabbing my keys. "Chloe has a soccer game, and Sam has a science fair, and I promised them pizza and a movie night." I walked out to the porch. The big oak tree was shedding its leaves again, just like that day Mark left for his camping trip. But this time, the driveway didn't feel empty. It felt full of possibility. I had lost a husband, a best friend, and my naivete. But I had kept my house, I had saved my children, and most importantly, I had found the woman I was supposed to be all along. Trust is like a mirror, yes. When it breaks, you can't fix it. But sometimes you just have to sweep up the glass, throw it in the trash, and buy a brand new one. And let me tell you, I really like the reflection I see today. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.